soon. And the point that I made earlier is we'll have some news on that soon, very soon.
I believe someone may have got a little trigger happy at Immigration New Zealand, but when the government is ready to announce that, we will.
Hi everyone, I'm Erica Stanford, National Party Spokesperson for Immigration. We just started with a wee reminder there of what happened this week. I'm joined tonight by Arran Hunt, who is an immigration specialist, immigration lawyer and partner at Stace, Hammond. Welcome along.
Thank you, Erica, and hello, Internet.
I thought I'd just give you do you just want to give us a quick overview of you and what you do and who you are and how you got to where you are, so people know who you are?
Okay, I'm a partner at Stace Hammond. We are an Hamilton original firm, but based in Auckland now, around for 109 years, I think. I specialise in two areas. My main area right now is immigration law, where I do a lot of work with clients. We do a lot of work with appeals, IPT, basically fighting those little niggly fights where things aren't quite done correctly, which sadly happens more often than it should. So yeah,
a lot of those get overturned, don't they? But half of those IPT cases.
About half. It's crazy. If you go to IPT, generally, so it's a coin toss when it comes to the decision. It comes back, and often I think I'm currently betting 100% of my IPT cases have all been overturned and gone back to immigration to be fixed. Or actually, one was basically granted residence on the spot. So yeah, it's good for us, good results, but it just shows that there's a broken system already when you have somebody going to IPT, which have to be fixed. So
yeah, well, what a week, right? This is we've spoken before, and we kind of had an inkling this was coming because my view is that they didn't have anywhere else to go. What was your view? Were you surprised?
I was at first until I think Wednesday we started putting the pieces together. And actually I put a video out that Wednesday afternoon basically saying, hey guys, you're about to see a visa announcement. And a few hours later we got the press release and we went quiet because we couldn't sort of break the press release. The next morning it came through. It was after so many months of hearing of SMC, of changes for SMC, that was going to be announced shortly. We'd hear from our contact all the time. It's coming soon. From the minister, from INZ, from March, April, May, June. Announcement soon. We saw the soon video, and then to be told actually no, not soon, next year. Instead, here's a whole new visa. So yeah, we didn't expect it until sort of the very last moment we heard things, and then we put it all together.
My view is, and I've said this publicly already, is that it feels like it's something that they haven't actually been working on for that long. It feels very knee-jerk and quite rushed. And given some of the anomalies in the policy, it looks like really it was something that they'd been forced into and kind of had to do and then sort of did on the fly. What's your view? Just a general overview of what they've done.
The fact that there is so little policy there, it is just this broad strokes. Here's what we're thinking. Here's
We've lost Arran. Hopefully he'll come back. Let's give him a second to unfreeze. We might need to get Arran to get off and come back. But in the meantime, oh, here we go. You're back. You froze for a while there.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. Your internet might be a little bit unstable. So you were just telling us about your view of how quickly this was done.
There was just no detail in it. It looks like he just made a decision on one day saying, yep, we're going to do this. And the fact that there seems to be no correspondence or discussions with the industry, with INZ, it seems to have been just, hey, I have an idea one day, let's do this tomorrow. So we think it hasn't been planned for months, as he's been saying, because we know that even recently we had that little snafu with the point change on the SMC website going up and being removed just a month ago. So this wasn't planned. This was very much knee-jerk reaction. Probably maybe saw your policy and thought, hey, that's a good idea. Let's try and push something like that out.
Well, that's what I like to think anyway. But it does sort of feel like that, given when I talk to the sector and the people who are usually consulted about these things, none of them were consulted at all. And my view is if they had been, a lot of the inconsistencies in the policy that we're starting to see come through, and we'll talk about them tonight, could have been ironed out. There are a lot of people who missed out, who, on the face of it, you look at them and say, well, those are people we really need here. So yeah, it does kind of feel like that. So do you have any idea about when we are going to see detail, or when Immigration New Zealand are going to write it and give it to their staff?
They've said, well, he said that they will provide the process to those applicants who are eligible to apply in December by the end of October. So we're hoping that we'd see this policy by then. However, we've been waiting for policies for months, and we saw that with the changes to the work visa in last year. They got pushed back because there was no policy, there was no definition. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was pushed back to sort of, we'll get the policy in November rather than sometime in October. So he said October, but I'm not sort of sticking by that. I'm not trusting it. I think I've been burnt too many times.
Yeah, well, one of the main things, and we're going to get to people's questions. I've got a lot of them printed out, and a lot of them are coming through. But one of the big concerns, obviously, is are they going to be able to process 110,000 visas in a year? Now, you and I have talked about the numbers. The first tranche is going to be about 20 or 30,000, something like that, in that first December tranche, and then you're going to get everyone else in March. Now, they've got 4 months. What's your view on will those applications be spread out over 4 months, or will everyone apply on day one? What's your view of what will happen?
Everyone's applying day one. If you can apply, you're applying as soon as you can, because we know there's no priority other than those 2 phases. You apply and you're going to go into a queue. So everyone's going to be applying on the very first day they can apply. So 1st December, we're going to have 10,000 applications. 1st of March, 100,000 applications. It's going to come through immediately. No one's going to wait to apply.
Well, that's really a lot of the questions I'm getting through are around prioritising of that second tranche. Now, I've had so many emails of people saying, I'm eligible in March, I've got adult children. I'm eligible in March, I'm a split family. I'm eligible in March, I've been in the EOI queue for 18 months. So you're telling us that it's first in, first served, and that there's no priority for them?
Well, it's first in, first served now. It's not sort of first in back 18 months ago, which seems to have been what they should have done. They should have gone, okay, those of you who are in the EOI pool, or perhaps those of you who have been here for more than a certain number of years, we'll look at you first. But right now, it's basically going to be, okay, you've been here 8 years, you're in the EOI pool for a year and a half, but over here there was a person who was a student and just slides in there with a post-study work visa. Yeah, we're going to see you equally, which just doesn't seem fair. It's
not fair, is it? And you would have thought, and I'm not going to let this one go, because once we're back in the house and if Farfoy's watching, I'll be ready for you need to be ready for this, Farfoy. Those split families, if you were going to prioritise anyone, why on earth didn't he prioritise split migrant families in the December tranche?
Exactly. And we're going to come back to the issue where how they're going to justify or what they're going to require for split families. I know you raised this in your chat the other night, that if you're a split family, are you going to require to prove it? Living together, are you going to require that? It's going to drag it out to a long application. This should be a fast, quick fire application. He said you're going to pump through these. We're going to get them all done in hopefully a year. But how? With migrant families, there is such a difficulty in showing that they're genuine and stable. Immigrate. Well, I think for you and I, we're looking and go, well, quite clearly genuine and stable, live together. Yep, that all works. Immigration is saying, well, are they? Where is the reams of documentation to prove that? It's not going to be fast. It's not going to be easily done.
That was something that came up the other night as well. I wanted to ask you about. There are a lot of migrants who will be eligible for this residency visa. Many thousands, I would expect, who have partners offshore. A lot of them will be culturally arranged marriages. Some will just be, people have partners on the other side of the world. They do that, So, are you expecting there to be the living together test, the same test for residents as there always is, which is a 12-month living together requirement for this visa?
I'm expecting that they're going to have that in there. I think
What's that going to mean?
Well, exactly. I think we've had sort of a year and a half of them putting in this new, very hard to meet criteria of living together for a certain period of time without telling us what that period of time is. And then it'd be hard for them to go from that to being, let's not worry about that, and you come for residence. I can't see them going that far. I think it's a step too far. And it would open it up probably to some level of abuse. So I have to say there's some fairness there, that if it's too easy to come in, people will abuse that. So
of course, I totally agree with you. But my question is, I guess, how are they going to process those quickly? Because as you mentioned before, proving you've lived together for 12 months is a stack of documents, right? Like a box of, here's our marriage certificate, here's our lease, here's all our communications, here's our car we bought together, here's the tickets to the movies, all of that stuff an immigration officer is going to have to go through. So are they going to be able to process these in a year if they're having to take all that time?
No chance. Especially because we know that so many of these will have partners offshore who've been stuck offshore or haven't come to the country or may have had a GVV and couldn't use it. You're going to have those, you're going to be some who are easy, they'll get pushed through in a matter of an hour. Look at it, yep, tick, through you go. Once you have a partner who's offshore or hasn't been in New Zealand for a number of years, that's going to drag out for months. It's a lot of work for Immigration New Zealand. And if he's not going to hire more staff to handle this, no chance of doing 100,000 in a year.
You lead me to another really good point, because I was watching Minister Farfoy's Facebook Live with the EMA, and they asked him about that. Are you going to increase the number of staff at Immigration New Zealand who process residencies? And he said, no, we're going to spread it more evenly across Immigration New Zealand staff so anyone can pick up visa processing. I guess my question to you is, what is the, all those other teams who are processing other sorts of visas like visitor visas and other types, do you think they have the extra capacity without affecting their own work to be able to pick up residents? And is that a good solution?
I deal with INZ on a regular basis. I know a number of the staff well. I chat to them all the time, and they are constantly under the gun. They are overloaded with work. There's not enough staff there. There's not enough training of staff coming in. Don't get me wrong, they do a fantastic job, and I have a lot of respect for the INZ crew. But there is no way they can go, yep, that's fine. We're relaxed, we're lazy, we can do capacity. Give us more work. Not going to happen. It's almost an insult to them that the minister thinks that they can take on this workload as if they've got nothing else to do.
They're sitting there twiddling their thumbs.
Yeah, you got these long delays. You're changing job. There's a month delay for VOC. You're applying for partnership for a work visa. There's several months there. These are already slow processes because they're already overloaded. They can't just take on another 100,000 applications. It's just no chance. Yeah,
that's a really good point. Lots of the questions that are coming through are about, and people, and there are heaps coming through, they're much the same. People who are worried about their visas expiring. So they might be on a work to resident or essential skills or post-study work visa that's due to expire in between the date that they had to be here and the date of application. Have you heard anything about what will happen there?
We saw in the EMA presentation that the minister was saying that if there's people who are going to have a visa which is going to expire while it's being processed, he will roll that over and provide more time so people don't have to worry about visas expiring. But that hasn't been officially announced by anybody. He just said that during a presentation. So we're not quite sure whether that kicks in, whether that is after you've made an application, do you then know you're going to get free visas until it's processed? Whether it's prior to that, is it going to be anything between now and 1st of March? If so, it hasn't been announced yet. So by what he says, people who are on visas should be sort of comfortable that they'll be fine. But my advice to my clients is your visa's expiring, get a new visa. Don't trust that because he said it at one point. If you become unlawful and you're not lawful on when you need to apply, you could be out of luck. And an excuse of what the minister said during this presentation won't be enough.
Yeah, no, you're right. So there'll be a lot of people having to apply for visas because this hasn't been officially put out there that that's what they need to do, spending all that money and then maybe not having to do it. Do you think he will do it case by case in terms of rolling over their visas, or will he do a mass visa extension? Because again, we go back to the point that Immigration New Zealand aren't that well resourced and they're already behind and there's already delays. Will they be able to do a one-off extension for people as they come up, or will they just go, right, everyone on an essential skills who is eligible for this visa is expiring before this date gets extended? Can he even do that?
We know that he has the power to do that, and he's had that power extended through to, I think, 2023 now. And we've seen him do it several times before. But we do know that when he has used that power, it's taken immigration sort of 4 to 6 weeks to actually get that put in place. So when he does it across the board to everybody, it's a slow process as it is. If he does it to everybody, but only in certain situations, it will take him months for immigration to actually get that into place. So it has to basically be, I think, across the board, if you hold one of these visas, you get an extension. That's the only way he can do it without taking months.
Yeah, that's right. So that was my question, the technical bit about whether, because we've seen him extend visas, whole classes of visa, but not portions of those, only if you're eligible for this visa. And I thought, can he do it? Probably can, but you're right. The actual ability of Immigration New Zealand to get that done is hard. And we saw that, you and I saw that for months when people technically had their visas rolled over, but it wasn't updated in the system. Their kids weren't able to go to school. It was a mess. So another mess coming down the pipeline. So what are one of the big questions I guess we get, and it's a real weird anomaly, I guess, is the students. So there are people in New Zealand who have been in New Zealand potentially for a long time. They may even have met all those criteria. They may have been in New Zealand for 4 years. They may have been on the long-term skills shortage list. So they could have got the visa, but let's say that they decided to go back and upskill because they wanted to do something different, or they needed some more points. And they now miss out. So have you had a lot of communication from people like that?
Quite a few, and they sort of seem to fall into two categories. You have those who are doing sort of PhD levels, and they've come through, they've done a bachelor's degree, then masters and PhD. They've had 7, 8, 9 years in the country studying, and these are the ones we want to hold on to because these are the ones who create more jobs in the future. They lift our universities up in international rankings. Then you have those who have come to New Zealand, perhaps done some education, perhaps then done 3 or 4 or 5 years working, may not have hit that wage requirement, or may have wanted to do bigger aspirations, want to get to a higher level in something else. So they've gone to do their masters or their PhD, and they've been here for 8, 9 years working for half of that, and they're being forgotten about because right now they're not on a work visa. Where those who have come in and studied and done a couple of years of study and now on a work visa, post-study work visa, are being allowed in, but those with 8, 9, 10 years aren't. There seems to have been no thought given as to how are we going to capture those who have dedicated themselves to this country and the future of this country and keep them involved, but they haven't really thought about that. No,
I've got a real sympathy for those PhD students. I mean, they're the kind of people we want in this country, boy, and they've been left out. So that's a real shame. Also, you must have been contacted, I have been as well, by people on partnership visas. So again, they meet all the criteria. They may be in healthcare, they may be working in healthcare, they might be earning a load of money, they might have been here for 4 years, but they don't qualify. Have you had cases like that? Any examples of cases like that?
So many partnerships, so many partners who are partners of work visa holders, or actually often partners of students. And they are working, there's nurses in there, there's the healthcare, the people in healthcare, people in aged care, people security in MIQ. I think you've had some of those that they're working in the front line, working in a dangerous situation, and they're not included because they're on a partner's visa. And that, again, doesn't make sense. We're looking to maintain the healthcare workers in this country. Why not just say if you're working in one of these areas, you're included? Why put it down to you must be on a particular work visa rather than any work visa?
Yeah, I said that in a number of comments. If you're working in an area that we desperately need, do we care what visa you're on? Probably not. Seems to be something else he hasn't really thought through just because of the rushed nature of this. One of the things we've picked up, because it came through in the answers to NZAMI, is if you're on a post-study work visa and you don't have a job, but you meet the 3-year criteria, are you still eligible for residence?
Yes, you are. So if you have come to New Zealand and you've done a bachelor's degree, you may have only just gotten your post-study work visa. As long as you've had the 3 years here, you could be unemployed and you can fill into this application. You will get residency, which it's great for them, but it just seems to not offset against those who can't make it when they've had a decade in the country.
What about the essential skills visa? This is and I'm still getting my head around this, and I don't know if there's detail. Maybe you can update us. If you're on an essential skills work visa and you've lost your job, so you still hold the visa, but you've lost your job, or you lose your job before you apply, and you're not currently holding employment, at the time of application, when they're processing your visa, are they going to care that you're not employed? Is an employment, and I'm talking about the people who earn under $27 an hour and are relying on the 3-year rule. If they're not employed, does it matter? Are Immigration New Zealand going to be checking employment status, or is it going to be like the post-study work visa where they They don't care if you're working or not.
Technically speaking, under the rules, if you are on an essential skills work visa and you lose your job, you're required to notify immigration that you have had a change of status. And at that point, you're supposed to apply for a visitor visa or some other way to stay in the country lawfully, and they remove your work visa. However, with this, the only way they can do it quickly is that those who are applying under the I've been in New Zealand 3 years and I have an essential skills work visa, we can't see why they would even ask, are you still working, checking this. Now, I'm not encouraging people to lie to immigration, but when you make the application, there'll most likely be a box saying, are you this, are you this, are you 3 years, are you $27, or are you on one of the scarce lists? If you tick the box saying, I am 3 years, immigration know that because they'll have your records of your travel, they'll know you have a work visa. I can't see why they would ask for confirmation about your employment. It would just be adding to a workload, which they by their own mention, they have said 3 years is the criteria. 3 years and hold the visa. You hold the visa, whether you hold it or not is another question. You have 3 years, that's its residency.
You gotta feel sorry then for all of those PhD students who work as well, and their partnership visa holders who are employed and working and may fit all those criteria, and yet can't get residence, and you might find someone else who doesn't have a job. It's very, that's why I have sympathy for these people who've been left out, because that they for all other intents and purposes fit the criteria, but just not holding the right visa types.
Especially as PhD have a right to work full time. So most of them probably be working, actually probably in the university, tutoring, lecturing. They are adding value to the system, and they can't even apply.
Let's talk about the 3 year time frame, because this seems to be a bit odd, and I haven't yet seen anyone able to give me a good explanation as to why it's and rather than or. The minister is requiring you to have been in the country on, I think, the 29th of September 2018. That date might be slightly wrong. I forget exactly what it is, 28th or 29th of September 2018, and again on the 29th of September 2021. And 821 odd days in between, which is 75% of the time. So it allows those people to have travelled overseas, taken holidays, and not been in New Zealand. So I understand the 75% rule, but can you think of any reason why they've made it, and not or? Because there are a lot of people who may have come in, say, in October 2018 and have not left the country. They've been here the whole time, 100%, meet like 1,000 days. But they don't qualify for residence. So do you know why he's done that?
I'm still waiting to see the official rules, because I'm having difficulty to seeing actually, like when I look at a new legislation or new rules coming through, I'm thinking, okay, as a lawyer, how do I draft this to work? And I'm trying to think how you would draft it, requiring you to be in New Zealand on a certain day, when someone could have been in the country and then been on holiday, or have arrived on the 30th and been here for 3 years, but not on that certain day. It doesn't make sense why you would do it that way. I think the 821 days, that makes sense. It allows you to have some time at home or some time offshore, some time traveling somewhere, but still show your dedication to the country in the past 3 years. And that's how they do it with when you're becoming a New Zealand citizen. You have that days in the country. It's not sort of requiring you to be on a certain day. But here, I can't see how that's going to work. How you would write that into legislation or into the rules is actually going to be a functional way to write it. 821 days, that works. Last 3 days, finished, works. 821 days and in the country on or before that date, it just starts getting complicated.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense. I mean, who cares if you were here 1 month after that or 1 month before that? If you meet the criteria and you've been here the whole time and worked really hard. And a lot of the questions that are coming through, I can see are about that. One of the gripes that's coming through, also I can see there's a few people on here who are frontline border workers and don't meet the criteria because they are not paid $27 an hour. I think their rate's about $22 an hour, and they came here on student visas and are now working, but they don't meet the 3 year criteria. So what's your view on that? Do you have you sympathy for them?
Oh, huge sympathy. They've been doing a very difficult job, I think, working in MIQ. A niece of mine is starting to be a doctor now, and she was working as a nurse in one of the home cares during the lockdown. And just hearing about her post-work procedure of getting home and going into a side room and the various layers of protection and washing and that stuff, so that she didn't risk spreading things. That's what they're doing as their regular job, that constant caution, constant concern about possibly catching this horrible virus. And when it comes to the pay, of course, they're being paid effectively by the government. So if they're being underpaid, that's the government who's underpaying them. That should be a higher pay just for the risk alone. And then you look at the sort of the roles where they have said, okay, these are the primary sector roles where you can get the scarcity allowance. And I'm trying to think how a deckhand has a greater value to this country than someone working in security in MIQ, or a fencer or a florist. You know, no offense to these people in these jobs, but being a florist compared to being security at MIQ or working in MIQ or working in these frontline establishments, I just can't see how they should get sort of rewarded for being in a position where the security guys who have given their chances, that given that risk, don't. You know, you look at the approach that France took with their healthcare workers. You know, back in end of 2018, Christmas Eve, all of you in the healthcare, you're all now citizens. Fantastic. That's how you thank these people doing this hard work during a pandemic, rather than sorry, but we don't pay you enough, so you can't be a resident. Yeah,
it does bite a bit, because we saw the Prime Minister every day up on the podium of truth telling us how important those border workers were and how they needed to be thanked, and they're part of the team of 5 million, and not now.
They were merely a sub for the team, and now they're off. Now they're in the changing rooms effectively.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And look, and I do know that some of those security companies are lobbying the government to try and get them in the team of people who've been who are eligible. I'm starting to hear rumours, and I don't know how true they are, but have you heard anything about the minister potentially widening some of the criteria, because he's under a lot of pressure? He's under a lot of pressure for these anomalies, and I'm starting to get people say to me, he is actively considering other groups of people that he may have missed out. Do you think that it would be that A, he is, or B, that it would be wise to kind of open Pandora's box, so to speak? What's your view on that?
I think he is considering it. The problem he's got is that if he then makes that change, it falls down, the whole view of, this is months of work, sort of falls over, because it clearly then wasn't months of work, because he's made changes to it so quickly. So I would hope that he sort of gets past that embarrassment and just makes the changes and widens this to bring in these anomalies which should be there in the first place. Yeah.
Hey, some of the questions that are coming through are around being able to leave the country. So once you're eligible, can you leave the country and then come back and apply? And is that something that you would suggest that to your clients that they do if they need to get offshore to see family or whatever?
You can do that as long as you are back to apply before the application lapse at the end of July. However, for our clients, we would recommend them not to leave the country, because MIQ is a mess. If you leave the country, chances are you might get back into the country and you've just lost residence. So we're saying to our clients, stay. Don't go anywhere. Stay in the country, get the application made, and then if you want to look at leaving the country for a holiday. But even then, again, if you're stuck offshore, they can't process your application if you're offshore. So
that was my next question. So once you've got your application in and you leave, because let's say you're a split family and you're desperate to see your kids you haven't seen in 2 years, what's the process? Can they not finalise your residence unless you're onshore? And will they wait for you to come back onshore to process it? Does it go on ice or does it lapse? What happens?
Residence visas are a strange beast. I have no idea why it is this way, but a residence visa, if it's granted somebody offshore, it's not active until you're actually onshore. So someone's offshore. We had a client who was granted residence in January of 2020, and his wife was offshore, and so she was granted it as well, but only when she arrived in New Zealand, and then the borders closed in China and the borders closed here, and she is not in the country yet. So her residence visa is sitting there waiting for her to activate it. Until that point, she can't use it to enter the country because she's not a resident until she actually gets here. So they'll probably allow processing to continue when they are offshore, but they cannot grant it to be used until they're back in New Zealand. So if you're offshore on a work visa and you have no right to enter the country, you're stuck offshore. you cannot use the residence visa to re-enter.
Yeah. Hey, have you had a look at the scarce list primary sector roles?
I'm looking at it right now. There's some crazy roles on there.
I looked at it today for the first time. So just for those people watching, they have a list of occupations that will be eligible for this resident visa if you work in the primary sector. And they've given us a list of some of these jobs. And some of them, a baker, a baking factory worker, a brewery worker. One of the ones that was, one of the ones I thought was the weirdest, there was a knitting machinist, a florist, as you mentioned before, a florist. Some really odd things on here that just don't make sense, and I can't get my head around. Why is it? Where did this list come from? Is this something that they have drawn up while they were getting this policy up and running, or is this a pre-existing thing that they've dumped in? And why on earth is it that you've got such odd occupations on there that now give you the right to residence, which trump everything? You could be earning minimum wage. You could have turned up 3 months ago, but as long as you are a knitting machinist, you're in, or a florist. Can you explain that? Because I don't get it.
From what we've heard, this list it didn't exist before. This list was created for this purpose. He's gone to the various industries and gone, hey, which jobs do you think should be on this list? And they've gone, well, this job, that job. Some of them you sort of make sense. Some of the scientist roles, there's a lot of sort of dairy farm workers on there. But yes, things like baker, chef. Actually, chef appears both in this list and also on the shortage list.
Long-term skills, yeah.
Twice. Yeah, so if you're a chef, you got two guys. But yeah, the horse groomer. I would not have considered that a horse groomer is sort of a role that we have a shortage of, or that really perhaps need. Horses are great, but should that be on the list when other jobs aren't? Now, this has been a list that's been created by the various departments within government have said to the minister, yep, this is the ones we think should be in here.
I wonder if he gave it the once over. I mean, a deck hand, a fishing hand. I mean, I can sort of loosely see some of those, but they are, just, it's sort of unbelievable, some of the list, some of the jobs on that list there. So anyway, I was sort of blown away by that today. So I was really keen to know if that was something new. So it's something that's interesting, because we'll have the minister up about that, because obviously it's something they've created. What are some of the things that you're seeing, or questions that you're getting, or some of the anomalies that you're seeing come through that we haven't already talked about while I look for some questions to answer?
There's just so many people who have, I think we said before, changed their status, or you have the husband's on a visa, say on a work visa, and the wife's on the partnership visa, and the wife's got a better job, so she's going to go across to a work visa, and the partner's to go somewhere else. And if you have to maintain your eligibility both on the September 29th and when you apply. So if the husband is on the post-study work visa on the 29th of September, he needs to remain on an eligible work visa. So he has to remain on a post-study visa or essential skills work visa. Now, if he hasn't got a job to go to, but the wife's got a great job as a nurse, she can go across onto an essential skills work visa, but she wasn't eligible on the 29th. So they've now sort of changed places, and they're no longer eligible, which just doesn't make sense. When the wife, quite possibly been working for a nurse for years, but she was on a partnership visa because why not? It's an easy visa to get. So that's when we're seeing a lot people who are caught out by that.
I've got one here. Rohit says, what will happen to a partner who's never been to New Zealand, but their partnership visitor visa, I presume they mean GVV, or maybe PVV. He said PVV, but maybe he means GVV, is on hold. And she's also included in my work to residence application, which I applied in June 2021.
So yeah, they may have had a PVV, but because she's a partner of a work visa holder, they would have gone to hold because they couldn't grant it. They can be included if there has been a PVV granted. Then that showed that immigration have at least been happy with their status as living together in a genuine and stable relationship. Whether they have lived together long enough to satisfy if there's going to be a 1-year requirement with what the rules are actually going to be. She may be eligible, she might not be. The minister did say that applicants, partners who are offshore can be included in the application. It just comes down to, I said before, whether they can actually grant the visa to someone offshore and to make use of it. So it can come down to the details that once we get from the minister as to how it's going to work.
Yeah, and that's what's tripping a lot of people up. A lot of questions are coming through about the English language test. So what have you heard about that?
It is gone. There is no English language test, no IELTS, no Cambridge, no PT, no nothing. They are completely gone. Which is great for a number of applicants. So
the prepaid English tuition that partners had to get, that will be gone as well, we presume?
That is gone. No requirement for the applicant, for partners, for children, nothing at all.
Interesting about that. I've been contacted by a lot of the English schools who are sort of hanging on by a thread, who have been over the last little while taking up some of those students have prepaid their English language as part of their visa requirement. And they're saying to me, well, I wish someone had come and told us, because that's my business gone, because we relied on those people coming in, prepaying their English language and then coming and doing their English language with us. Without that, and without any international students, that's my business gone. But they weren't consulted on that at all. So perhaps a little nugget there to prove that this wasn't as well thought through as perhaps the minister wants us to believe. Most of the questions are coming through about the international students and partnership visas. I'll just go to my notes because I've got a whole lot that got printed out. Can you explain what the SAT team is and what they do, and have you experienced a whole lot of hold-ups? I got a couple of emails with people who say, my application is sitting with the SAT team and it's been there for months. What do they do, and why is there such hold-ups?
They're looking at generally usually security issues or concerns, which can be based purely on where someone's from. It's generally not about, we know about you and there's some issue. It's often about where they're from. It could be from a certain country they have concerns about, so they'll go through additional checks. And those checks often go off to places like Interpol, where they're waiting for Interpol to respond to a request, and they won't chase it until there's been 6 months with Interpol before they chase it further. So those can take a long delay as immigration sits back and goes, okay, it's out of our hands, it's with a third party, we're waiting for X, Y, and Z to respond to us. And that's usually the delays that come through from that. We see it a lot for those from Eastern Bloc, from the Russias, the Ukraine, places like that, who will go through that team, and it will just create more delay. With these applications, the minister has said that they won't be doing the same sort of offshore security checks. There'll be a police certificate from New Zealand will definitely be required. Otherwise, they will sort of trust that previous police certificates and checks we done have been fine, and they'll just let those things sort of go through. So with this, the SAT hopefully won't be an issue unless there's actually some notification about the person themselves that needs to be looked into.
One of the questions I have, and I know you have mentioned this to me, and maybe you can explain it to everyone out there. What about casual workers?
Casual workers, there's an issue with casual workers in that the casual agreements are being used too widely. Now, an employment agreement, if you're working, if there's a requirement for you to work, or that the employer expects you to work and you expect to get work from the employer, you're not casual, you are a permanent employee. But when immigration sees the employment agreement, they're going to look at it and go, well, does the employment agreement require at least 30 hours a week for the employer to provide you work? If it says no, then you are actually not going to be meeting the requirements with immigration, because they're going to look at the worst case scenario. If your agreement says we may give you some work, they will assume it's 0 hours. No matter how much history you have working full time, they're going to go, well, there's no requirement in the future to be given this work. So with casual agreements, there is no obligation for the employer to give work. So whenever we see those, we go to the employer, look, can we fix this? And say at least 30 hours a week, because they're doing 30 hours a week. Put it into the agreement, because immigration is going to be looking for that requirement. Without that, they could say, no, this is not valid. It is a casual employment agreement. There's no obligations.
You don't think that he will give some leeway and say, well, look, if you can give us, some proof through your paychecks for the last 12 months or however long to show that you've worked an average of 30 hours, we'll consider you? Or do you think that it will just be a blanket, no, you don't qualify?
I doubt he's thought about it. at this point. Yeah, I would hope they did give some allowance there, because we see a lot of people working, especially in the healthcare sector, working on the casual contracts, who are doing the hours, and it just comes down to the hospo, a lot of hospo. The employer not being aware there is a legal requirement to have a full-time contract, or permanent contract, sorry, rather than a casual contract. It's just a bad habit for the employer, which if they'd applied for a work visa at some point, the immigration should have actually caught them and said, hey, can you please fix this? Typically in the past, immigration will let the employer fix it when you're going for a work visa. They'll say, there's an issue here, get that fixed, make it 30 hours, no issue. Here, because it's set on a certain date, on that date, were you permanent employee, were you doing 30 hours a week? They may not allow that fix to take place after the fact. So it's going to come down to what's in the rules.
Okay.
Yeah, today's thought about it right now.
So one of the questions I get a lot, and I think it was actually asked to Farfoy when he was in the EMA discussion, but he didn't understand the question and he answered it differently than I think the person asking it expected. The question was, I am in the current process, I've had my invitation to apply, I've put my application in, are you still going to, firstly, are you still going to keep the priority queue for people who are outside of the, who are going to continue on the same path they're already on and not do the new visa, but the old visa? Will you continue the fast tracking? And also, I guess the question is, will they continue to process those existing visas of people who don't switch over at the same pace? And I guess the next part of the question is, what are you advising your clients? Like, at what point would you say, look, no, go to the new visa? And at which point would you say, no, actually, you're so far down the track, we think you should stick with the process that you're in? What's your advice?
For those who are already have the SMC in place, and we know where they're up to when it comes to allocations. I think it's late November. Yeah.
2019, for those people who are watching. November 2019 is where they're up to.
Almost 2 years ago. For those who are pretty close to soon after then, we're saying to our clients, look, we know it's going to possibly be, if nothing changes, 4 to 6 weeks before allocation. At that point, processing time will be 3, 4, 5 months. We'll look at their situation and go, okay, what are you going for under the new visa? Are you going under the new visa of being, you have an SMC? That's fine, quickly processed, probably change to the new one.
Could you do both? Could you stay in both trains?
He mentioned that. See, we have in one place he said, yes, you can do both. But then we heard from the EMA discussions that actually we'll just move you across to the new one. So it seems to apply for the new one, you move you across, but you don't. There's no clarity. It seems to be a conflict then as to the advice we're getting.
Yes.
For most applicants, I think it's going to basically be go to the new one if you're SMC, go to the new one unless you're being granted like next week. If you're getting allocated next week, stay with it. If you're being allocated already to an officer, stick to it. Unless you know you're going to get declined, then change to the new one. Otherwise, change to the new one, because it should be a tick the box endeavour, through you go, and also possibly a refund of some of your fee.
And I guess the question about, will they keep the priority queue for the existing SMC and work to residence people? Will they keep that priority queue going?
I think he's got the assumption that everyone's going to change. Everyone's going to change to the new visa. I think his idea is that the SMC queue will be just decimated and empty pretty quickly because everyone's going to apply for this new visa and they're going to move everybody across. He can then use that SMC team to process the new applications. I think that's what's in his mind. Okay,
well, here's a scenario. Let's say you're on a work to residence visa. You've put your application in. So you would qualify for the December round. Is that correct? Yeah, everyone. So you would most likely go across.
If you've applied for the residence from work after having the other one for 2 years, and you apply for the residence from work residence visa,
yeah. I have a degree of sympathy for those work to residence visa holders who've had to get brand new work to residence, the work part of their visa just in the last month or so, and paid all of those fees for the medicals and all the things they had to do, to now find out that actually that the minister, is going to auto extend everyone else, and you get this new process. It's a bit of a slap in the face. Just going back to the processing of all these visas, lots of the questions that are coming through are people who are just really upset at the fact that they've been waiting so long in a queue, in a frozen expression of interest queue, and now they're going to have to wait, a lot of them, until March to get their application in, and then potentially could be another, I mean, who knows how long it's going to take them to get through that. I mean, you must have some sympathy for those people.
No, massively, especially because we've had words from immigration of the minister since March of being told, the whole soon thing. In March, we were told, yeah, the minister will be announcing soon when the draws are restarting. And then we heard it again in April, they heard it again in May. And they get on saying, yeah, it's soon, we'll let you know soon. And so people were sitting there waiting and saying, okay, yeah, it'll be soon, I'll wait. And now they're being told, yeah, wait till next year now. You know, yeah. They have a date now, but it's still already been a year and a half of waiting. And with this, of course, with skilled migrant, having the draws not taking place does not prevent COVID. They're already on shore. This delay in the draws occurring had nothing to do with COVID whatsoever. You know, if you're in the country for several years working, you've applied for skilled migrant, you're in the pool, not doing the draws does not protect this country. Actually, it means we're losing nurses, losing doctors. It's actually counter to what they're trying to do. So I have great sympathy for them because they've come to me for months. I've reviewed the applications and gone, yeah, it looks great as it is now. Who knows when the draws take place?
One of the things that has been said to me is that you could have your SMC application in and have had it looked at and been declined. So you've had your application thoroughly looked at, and immigration have gone, no, we've got some concerns around the, let's just say, the validity of the documents you've given us. We don't think that they're genuine. We don't think that you're, let's say you may have provided a university degree documentation, and for argument's sake, the immigration have looked at it and gone, we don't think it's genuine. You're not getting residence. Those people will now be able to apply for this new visa, right? And will they have what's happened to them and their decline in the past have any impact on their new application?
Yes, it will. There's one thing that immigration hates about anything else, and that is not being truthful with immigration. I've had clients who have had assault convictions, drunk driving, drug convictions, and I've managed to get them residency and visas. But whenever a client ever doesn't tell immigration the truth, that is years of fighting sometimes. Whenever you apply for a new visa, they raise it again. And it's this whole idea about you go to court, you're found not guilty. That's it. With immigration, every time you apply for another visa, you're being tried again and again and again for years and years and years until you finally get residence. So when they go for the applying in March, they'll be question about this. Immigration will look at it and go, oh, you've misled us. That's a character issue. You require a waiver, and that would be an issue for them.
Do you think that with the amount of applications that they've got to get through, that they will pick up on things like that, or do you think some of that stuff will just slip through, unchecked?
I think that's the one thing that they usually spend a lot of time on checking is the character thing. That they have it as a personal grudge. You could have committed crimes everywhere else, and of course, an immigration breach is deadly low, but they will hold it as being you're the worst person on the planet because you may have told us something that wasn't true once.
Right.
Unless there is a direction from the minister to be kinder in those situations, I think they're going to hang on to that, and that's going to again slow things down.
What about if you work for an employer who's on has been blacklisted, is on the non-compliant immigration's non-compliance list? Are those people going to be eligible for residence? Are they going to care that they work for an employer who's on their blacklist?
That's a good question. That might be a wait till we see the rules scenario. If they're applying and they're not having to prove their employment, so if you're applying under post-study work visa and you've got 3 years here, that won't matter. If you're applying with a teacher skills work visa, we've got 3 years here, that won't matter because you shouldn't need to prove your employment, just that you hold the right visa. If you are applying under $27 or the scarcity list, that could be a factor. It will come down to, I think, to what was the rules state. But yeah, actually, good question. I hadn't thought of that one. That's going to be it'd be an issue. Yeah.
What about? So just looking at the questions that are coming through, and some of them are asking about, or they're saying, look, we've been allocated, we talked about this a little bit before, but someone's just said, look, we've been allocated a case officer. We're quite far down the process. Do we keep going? We've got a case officer, and even if it's a second person check, should we keep going or should we switch?
If you're at 2PC, basically it should be under a month before you get your residency. If you think that it might get declined, then
pull it out of there.
Pull it out of there, or perhaps try and delay it. There are times where I basically talk to immigration and try to sort of drag things out, sort of drag it out till 1st of December, and then switch. But yeah, the thing if you think you're going to get declined, a declined visa is a hassle going forward. Whenever you apply for a visa in any other country, they're going to have that little box saying, "Have you been declined a visa ever?" Even if you later become a New Zealand citizen, tick that box saying yes for the rest of your life. So if you're looking at a declined SMC application, factor in the fact that it is a hassle the rest of your life, and it may prevent you getting visas for other countries. If you say to them, yes, I was declined a visa, they ask why, because I provided a dodgy document, or I overstated something, or I didn't tell them the truth, you'll be declined other visas in the future. So if you're looking at an SMC that's about to be declined, pull it, or delay it until 1st of December and switch. Declines are bad.
Yeah. But a lot of the questions that are coming through they're mostly about the students, which we've already talked about, and a lot of the things we've already said. I guess we can just sort of wrap it up. I mean, I'll sort of give my thoughts, I guess, and then you can give your concluding remarks before we let everyone get back to their evenings. But look, I guess my overwhelming sort of view is that this is a great thing for not only those migrants, but also for our communities and for our economy, because as you know, we're in this biggest labour shortage we've had in 40 years, and we're bleeding staff offshore. I mean, you and I have seen so many people, talented people, leave to Canada and Australia because they didn't have any certainty about their future here. And so we had to stop the brain drain, I guess, and keep people here. One of the things that bothers me a bit, though, is that there's for those people who didn't, whenever you create a rule, you have people that don't qualify. And so we've talked about some of them tonight, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not the minister does a backflip on any of those and how many he backflips on. But I guess it would have made them feel a bit better when they realised they didn't qualify if they knew what the rules of the future were. What are the rules for SMC going to be next year in July when they reopen the pool and the draws? What are the points going to be? What are the earnings going to be? What are the requirements, so that they could plan their lives and say, right, well, I missed out, that's a shame, but here's the pathway that I have and I can now work towards. So he didn't give that. And I look back in May when he answered a written question saying, I've made a decision about SMC and an announcement is imminent. Well, what decision was that? It feels like he made some decisions back in May and then decided not to do them because, he saw what we all saw, which is, hey, we've got a massive labour shortage, and actually your immigration reset speech was out of date 6 months before you gave it. And we actually need people to stay in the country. And I think I get the feeling, I don't know whether or not you agree with me, that, he had some plans for SMC. He may have made a decision, he scrapped it, and then at the last minute, put this policy together. And I guess we'll find out when we get all the cabinet papers to see when he took it to cabinet. And, and I suspect that date may be August, which shows that, again, it wasn't well thought through. So I don't know what your concluding remarks are, Arran?
I think it is. I agree that it's got the form of a good policy. When I saw it, and I thought, like, this is great. There's a lot of people who this is going to save, people that need to be in the country, it's going to keep them here. It's just about 10 months too late, and need probably another couple months of actually thinking about it and working it out and talking to people like myself or in the industry in general and saying, okay, where are the holes here? Where can we fix things, make things better? I want to see partners work visa holders be added. I want to see PhD students be added, and perhaps get rid of the whole being here on that day in 2018. Just basically 821 days in the last 3 years. Make it nice and simple. We can count the days out. There it is. I think you do those things, that's getting towards a better policy. Again, just it should be here in January, not in September. Yeah,
well, I guess we'll see over the next short while what he does, because I know he's under significant pressure by different groups of people who, if he gets the same volume of emails that I get, he's under the pump, and it does have all the hallmarks of a sort of a knee-jerk rushed policy. So I guess the time will tell, and see if he holds his ground or if he backs down and takes in some of these good suggestions. I'm certainly going to be writing to him about the split migrant families. It's the first thing I'm going to do. I more than anyone, I look at them and think, actually, if they apply, let's say they apply in March, by the time, maybe, that they get their residence maybe in the middle of the year and then finally get their families, it's going to be coming close to 3 years since they have seen their kids. And I just can't understand why he didn't prioritise them. So we'll put him under a bit of pressure about that. But certainly those other things that you've mentioned are things that he will be under pressure for. So we'll wait and see. But thank you so much for joining me. You're a lot more learned in these areas than I am. And so it's been really good to have your brains answer some of these questions. And hopefully we'll get you back.
Happy to help anytime.
Awesome. All right. And see you, everyone. See you next time.
See you, folks.